The evac order came through at Aero 340, and by Aero 342 every other medic in the 716th field station had already loaded onto the transport. I stood in the doorway of Ward 3 and listened to the engines fade. There were 11 beds in Ward 3. 10 of them were empty, patients transferred, processed, or left to whatever came next. The 11th had a woman in it, blue-gray skin, close-cropped silver hair matted dark against her temple where the shrapnel had gone in, both legs immobilized, pressure seal over her left side that I'd put there 6 hours earlier, when they brought her in on a stretcher with no name tag and a triage card. Read, Concordat National, which was the polite military shorthand for, not our problem. I had a pack on my back. I had orders in my hand. I set the orders on the empty bed nearest the door, folded them once, and went to check her vitals. Her name was Kerath. I found it on a second tag tucked under the collar of her field tunic, the kind of secondary identification that royals sometimes wore because they'd learned that primary tags had a way of disappearing in combat zones. The tag was stamped with a sigil I didn't recognize at the time, a three-pointed crown above a line of script in the Kerath dialect. I didn't speak Kerath. I set the tag back where I found it and checked the pressure seal. It was holding, barely. "You're still here," she said. Her voice was low, controlled in the way of someone who had trained herself to sound controlled, even when she wasn't. Open and fixed on the ceiling. Large, dark, with an almost reflective quality that made it difficult to tell exactly where she was. I had noticed earlier that she never looked directly at me. I had assumed it was because she was in too much pain. I was starting to revise that assumption. "I'm still here," I said. The others left. "Yes, you should go." She said it without inflection, the way you state a fact about the weather. "The second strike window opens in 40 minutes. This structure will not hold a second strike." "I know. Then, why are you still here?" I pulled up the stool beside her bed and sat down, which is not something you do when you're about to leave. She turned her head then, the first time she'd looked directly at me, and I saw something move behind those dark eyes. Not gratitude, not quite. Something more wary than that. The look of a person who has been told too many times someone would stay and who has stopped believing it, and who is not sure yet whether to start again. "Your seal is leaking at the lower margin," I said. "If I don't reseat it in the next 20 minutes, you'll have a more immediate problem than the second strike. I am telling you to leave." "I heard you." I opened my kit. She watched me work. She didn't speak again for a long time, and neither did I. There was a focused kind of silence that settles over a medical bay when the only sound is the soft complaint of a pressure seal being reseated and the distant percussion of a war that has been going on for so long that most people have stopped counting the years. I had been a combat medic for 11 of those years. The 716th field station had been my assignment for the last 3. Before that, the 418th. Before that, a posting on a resupply frigate whose name I no longer said aloud, because 4 of the 7 people I'd served with on it were dead, and the other 3 had rotated out of active medicine entirely, the seal seated cleanly. I taped the margins, checked the sensor strip, and let out a breath. "That will hold now," I said. "You are very calm," she said. "Occupational habit. You are also very stubborn." "Occupational habit," I said again, and something shifted at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile. An acknowledgement. She had a precise angular face, the kind of face that showed everything through very small movements, once you knew how to look.
"Why are you assigned to this ward?" she asked.
I was told this station was staffed by automated systems. It is, mostly. I'm what happens when the automated systems run out of seals, and someone still needs suturing. I began logging her updated vitals on the handheld. The 716th hasn't had a full complement of human medics in about 6 years. Command keeps telling us the automation covers it. Command has not recently been the one reseating pressure seals at Aero 400 in a station that's about to take a second strike. She was quiet for a moment. "You resent them." "I resent the waste," I said. "Perfectly preventable deaths. Soldiers processed as non-priority because the system that was supposed to triage them ran a bad calculation. I don't lose sleep over command. I lose sleep over that." She looked at me steadily. I was listed as non-priority. I noticed. My own guard listed me as non-priority. Voice was still level, but there was something underneath it now. Not self-pity, Nothing as soft as that. Something older, particular weight of a person who has learned that their worth is contingent and who has been carrying that knowledge for a long time. They had orders to secure the command line. I understand why they made the choice they made. Understanding a choice and accepting it are different things, I said. She looked at me. Yes, she said quietly, they are. 32 minutes later, the second strike hit. I had moved her by then, got her off the bed and onto the floor of the supply corridor, which had 3 walls of reinforced paneling and 1 wall of open shelving that I pulled down to create a second barrier. She couldn't walk, but she could move her upper body, and she helped brace the shelving unit while I anchored it to the wall brackets. When the strike landed, the east ward collapsed entirely. The supply corridor shook like something alive and then went still. In the ringing silence afterward, she said, "You moved me, yes. How did you know the corridor would hold?" I didn't, but it had better structural ratings than the ward, and the angles were favorable. I checked the seal again in the dark. The power was out now, station-wide, and I was working by the light of the medical pen light I kept clipped to my collar. "You're all right. Seal's intact. You assessed the structural ratings of this station before the strike." "I assess every station I'm posted to. Occupational habit." This time she did smile. It was brief and a little crooked, and it made her look for just a moment like someone other than a person in a great deal of pain. "You say that very often." "It's mostly true." She was quiet again. Outside, somewhere in the dust and the dark, something was burning. I sat with my back against the shelving unit and my kit open on my knees, and I kept monitoring the sensor strip on my handheld, watching the numbers, listening to her breathe. Just before dawn, she spoke again. "That sigil on my tag," she said. "You saw it. I put the tag back. I know, but you saw it." She paused. "It is the sigil of the Kerath First House. My full title, if I were to recite it, would take approximately 4 minutes, and would include several designations that have not been used in practical contexts. 200 years. I am the third of that name. I tell you this not because it changes what you are doing, because you should know who you stayed for." I looked at her. In the thin gray light coming in through the gaps in the shelving, eyes were very clear. "It doesn't change what I'm doing," I said. "I know," she said. "That is precisely why I'm telling you." The rescue shuttle arrived at 0611. The evac commander who stepped through the gap in the station wall took one look at the collapsed ward, then at the supply corridor, then at the 2 of us. A human medic sitting against a wall of jury-rigged shelving with a medical kit on his knees, and a blue-gray woman lying on the floor with clean seal margins and stable vitals. And said, with some bewilderment,
"Authorized Concordat treatment?"
Kerath looked at him. She looked at him the way a person looks a very small obstacle from a very great. "I did," she said. "Under Concord Statute 14, Article 6, a sovereign of the first house may designate personal medical authority in the field. I so designate." She said my name, my full name, the correct pronunciation, though I had never told her how it was spelled. "His medical orders carry the authority of my office. In perpetuity. Query that with your command if you wish. I will wait." The evac commander did not query it with his command. He helped get her onto the stretcher. I walked out of Kerath Station behind her in the early morning light, carrying my kit and 2 months of sleepless nights. And I thought, I have stayed for a lot of people who needed staying for. Most of them I never saw again. A few of them I did. The ones I did see again were always the ones who had looked at me, in the long dark middle of it, like I was something they had not expected to find. Like staying itself was the thing, like maybe that was enough. She was one of those.